Hey everybody, let's use our salt dough to create a really cool project and learn about our brains at the same time. When we learn about our brains, it can help us use them better, right? We are going to build a cross-section of the brain, meaning that we're going to make an inside, flat view of the brain. The brain is a really complicated organ in our body, and it has so many tiny little parts. Check out all the parts of the brain here. Don't worry, we're only going to make 6 big parts of the brain. Let's start with the part of the brain called the cerebrum. Tear or cut off a piece of your salt dough, about a handful or less. Quick, what's 1 plus 1? 2, right? The part of your brain you just used to answer that math problem is the cerebrum, the first part of the brain we're making. The cerebrum is the biggest part of the brain, and it looks like a big snake that coils and wraps around itself like this. Let's make the cerebrum with salt dough by rolling the dough into a coil or snake and then wrapping it around and around itself. It's okay if the snake breaks while you're building. Make sure to keep the cerebrum flat because remember, we're making a flat cross section of the brain. So our brain should turn out flat. Tear off another smaller piece of salt dough. Let's make the cerebellum, the next part of the brain. But first, give somebody a high five, even if it's just to yourself. Guess what? Your cerebellum is the part of your brain that told your muscles to high five. When you walk, run, dance, play a sport, or move at all, it's thanks to the cerebellum. Let's make the cerebellum out of salt dough by rolling our dough into a ball and then flattening it. The cerebellum is at the bottom back of the brain, so put your dough cerebellum under the cerebrum towards the back of your brain. Next, add some texture to the cerebellum with your fingernail or the handle of a spoon or fork. Next, let's make the prefrontal cortex. Woo, that's a tough one. Tear off another small piece of dough. Tap your forehead really quick. Right under where your finger is tapping, just under the skin and bone, is your prefrontal cortex. It's just a fancy name for the front of your brain. This part of your brain makes decisions for you, good or bad. You make all your choices with the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex looks a lot like the cerebrum. It's a coil or snake of dough that's wrapped around and around. Put it at the front of the brain, right next to the cerebrum like this. Let's make the next part, the hippocampus. That's a fun word, right? How do you get to the playground from your classroom? When you remembered how to get to the playground just now, you were using the little part of your brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus's job is to remember things, especially how to get to places. It's like the GPS of the brain. Make the hippocampus by making a little tiny coil or snake and then wrap it around in a spiral like a snail. Put it right next to the cerebellum and under the cerebrum like this. Almost done. Right on the end of the hippocampus is a little part of the brain called the amygdala. Tear off a really small piece of dough. How are you feeling today? Are you happy? Bored? Excited? All of your feelings and emotion come from the amygdala in your brain. Roll up the dough into a small sphere and flatten it to make the amygdala. Put it right on the end of your hippocampus. Okay guys, last challenge. Let's make the brain stem. The brain stem connects your brain to the rest of your body. It's what helps you keep breathing while you're sleeping and digest the food you eat. Make the brain stem by taking a large piece of dough, roll it into a thick coil or snake, and take your fingers or a butter knife to cut the end into two. It almost looks like a giant snake tongue or a letter Y. Put the brainstem right under your cerebellum so that the end of the snake tongue or the Y wraps around the circle. Now your beautiful brain is complete. Don't worry about what it looks like. All brains are different, and your own special way of making the brain is awesome. Don't worry about the fancy words either. At least you heard them, maybe for the first time, and now you know there are parts to the brain. Check out my niece's salt dough brain. Different from mine, but still super cool. If you'd like, you can leave your brain out to dry. It takes about 2 days to air dry. And then, if you have homemade paint or something at home to use, you can paint or decorate your brain. I decided to make mine a rainbow brain. Each color is a part of the brain we learned about. Please share your brain sculpture with me on Flipgrid. I really want to see how it goes. Bye-bye.